Look around you carefully, not casually, not the way you usually scan a room while your mind is somewhere else, but with intent, with suspicion, with the quiet awareness that something is always happening beneath the surface of what is being said. There are conversations inside conversations. There are decisions being made before words are spoken, and there are outcomes being shaped long before you even realize a game is being played. You think you are participating. Most of the time you are being positioned. And the most dangerous part of that reality is this: you don't feel it while it's happening. You only feel it afterward, when something doesn't sit right, when a result appears that you didn't expect, when you realize too late that the room moved without you. You were never taught to see this. You were taught to be honest, to communicate clearly, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to assume good intent, to believe that if you operate with integrity, the world around you will eventually mirror that back. And in quiet, low-stakes environments, that illusion holds just long enough to become dangerous. Because once something real is on the line, status, opportunity, leverage, influence, the rules change. But you don't. You carry the same assumptions into a different game, and that mismatch is where you start losing without understanding why. You think losses are loud. You think when someone beats you, you will see it clearly. But real losses are quiet. They are subtle shifts in perception, small adjustments in how people see you, tiny moments where someone else speaks and the room leans slightly in their direction instead of yours. Nothing dramatic. Nothing you can point to, but enough over time to tilt the entire structure against you. And by the time you notice, the outcome is already decided. Not because you are incapable, but because you are unaware. The people who consistently win in these environments are not always the most talented, not always the most disciplined, not even always the most prepared, but they are the most attentive to what others ignore. They watch patterns. They listen to tone more than words. They pay attention to timing, to pauses, to who speaks when, to who stays silent and why. They understand that every interaction is layered, that what is being said is only one part of what is being communicated. And because they understand this, they are not reacting to the surface. They are moving underneath it. You, on the other hand, have been trained to live on the surface, to respond to what is obvious, to engage with what is visible, to take things at face value because questioning everything feels exhausting, unnecessary, even paranoid. But that comfort comes at a cost. Because while you are responding to what is visible, someone else is shaping what becomes visible in the first place. They are not just playing the game, they are arranging it. And when you step into something that has already been arranged, your options are limited before you even begin. This is not about paranoia. It is about clarity. It is about understanding that human behavior, especially when something valuable is at stake, does not operate on ideals. It operates on incentives, on perception, on advantage. People do not always lie directly. That would be too easy to detect. They adjust context. They shift emphasis. They allow certain truths to surface while keeping others buried. And if you are only paying attention to what is explicitly said, you will miss the entire structure being built around you. Think about the last time you walked away from a situation feeling slightly off, like something didn't quite add up, but you couldn't articulate why. That wasn't confusion. That was your awareness trying to break through the version of reality you were being presented with. But instead of stopping, instead of examining it, you moved on. You dismissed it. You told yourself you were overthinking. And that moment, that exact moment, is where most people lose control. Not because they lack intelligence, but because they override their own perception in favor of comfort. The truth is, you have felt it many times, in conversations where someone asked just one too many questions, in meetings where your ideas were acknowledged but later presented as someone else's, in relationships where you found yourself explaining more than expressing, defending more than deciding. These are not random occurrences, and patterns, once recognized, change everything. The first shift you need to make is this: stop assuming neutrality. There is almost never a completely neutral environment when something of value is involved. People have preferences, incentives, pressures, and hidden agendas that shape how they move. This does not make them evil. It makes them human. But if you ignore that, if you continue to assume that everyone is operating purely on fairness and mutual benefit, you will consistently find yourself on the losing end of situations you thought were balanced. Once you accept that, something inside you will resist, because it forces you to let go of a comforting belief that the world is inherently fair if you are. That belief is easy to hold because it removes responsibility. If things go wrong, you can blame the system, the situation, the other person. But when you see the game clearly, that excuse disappears. Because now you know, now you can see, and once you see, you are responsible for how you respond. Awareness changes your posture, not physically, but mentally. You stop rushing to respond. You stop filling every silence. You stop offering more information than necessary. You begin to notice how people react when you don't immediately engage, when you let a moment breathe instead of controlling it. And what you will find is revealing. Some people become uncomfortable. They push harder. They try to pull you back into a rhythm where you are predictable again. And that reaction tells you everything you need to know about how they were operating before. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure. And most people cannot sit in pressure without trying to relieve it. They speak. They explain. They reveal. Not because they need to, but because the discomfort demands an outlet. And when you understand this, when you learn to hold that silence without rushing to break it, you gain access to something most people never see. You see what others expose when they think nothing is happening. But this is where discipline comes in, because your instinct will fight this. Your instinct will tell you to smooth things over, to clarify, to make sure everything is understood. That instinct is not wrong. In certain environments, especially competitive ones, clarity too early is vulnerability. Because the more you reveal about how you think, how you decide, what matters to you, the easier it becomes for someone else to navigate around you. This does not mean you become closed off or distant. It means you become selective. You choose when to reveal, how much to reveal, and to whom. You understand that not every situation requires full transparency, that not every person has earned access to your reasoning, that sometimes the strongest position you can take is one that is not fully explained, but clearly held. There will be moments where you feel underestimated, where someone speaks over you, dismisses you, assumes you are less aware than you are, and everything in you will want to correct that immediately, to prove yourself, to establish your position. But that impulse, that need to be recognized in the moment, is exactly what pulls you into their frame. Because the moment you start proving, you are no longer in control of the interaction. You are responding to it. There is a different way to handle those moments, a quieter way. You let the assumption stand temporarily. You observe how it shapes the behavior of the other person. You watch what they reveal when they believe they have the upper hand. And then, when the moment is right, when the information is complete, and the positioning is clear, you move, not loudly, not emotionally, but precisely. And that precision lands far harder than any immediate reaction ever could. You will start to notice something as you operate this way. The same situations that used to feel chaotic, unpredictable, even unfair, begin to slow down. Not externally, but in your perception. You see more, you anticipate more, you understand the direction of things before they fully unfold. And that understanding gives you space. Space to choose instead of react. Space to adjust instead of defend. Space to influence instead of follow. And this is where the real shift happens. You stop trying to win every interaction. You stop needing to correct every misperception. You stop chasing validation in moments that don't actually matter long term. Instead, you focus on position, on where you stand within the structure of the environment, on how you are perceived over time, not just in isolated exchanges. Because position compounds. One small shift, repeated consistently, changes the entire dynamic around you. People will respond differently to you even if they can't explain why. They will be more careful with their words, more deliberate in how they approach you, not because you became aggressive, but because you became less predictable. And unpredictability, when combined with composure, creates a kind of quiet authority that is difficult to challenge. This does not make you manipulative. It makes you aware. It does not remove your integrity. It protects it. Because now, instead of offering it blindly, you apply it intelligently. You choose where it belongs. You enforce it where it matters. And you withdraw it where it is not respected. That is not a compromise of your values. That is the refinement of them. The truth is you don't need to outplay everyone. You don't need to become the most strategic person in every room. You only need to stop being the easiest one to read, the easiest one to predict, the easiest one to position. Because once that changes, once you are no longer the obvious target, the dynamics shift naturally. The attention moves elsewhere. The pressure redirects, and you are free to operate without constantly defending your ground. There will still be moments where you are tested, where someone pushes, probes, tries to find the edge of your boundaries. That does not stop, but your response to it changes. You don't rush, you don't overreact, you don't explain. You let the moment sit. You respond just enough to establish that the line exists, without turning it into a spectacle. And that consistency, over time, builds something far more powerful than any single confrontation ever could. You become stable, not in a passive way, but in a way that makes your presence difficult to move. People sense it. They feel it in the way you hold eye contact, in the way you pause before speaking, in the way you choose your words carefully instead of filling space. It changes how people behave around you without you needing to instruct them. This is not about control in the aggressive sense. It is about influence in the structural sense, about understanding how interactions actually work and positioning yourself within them in a way that protects your interests without compromising who you are. It is a balance, and like any balance, it requires awareness, practice, and the willingness to see things as they are, not as you wish they were. Because the uncomfortable truth is this: you have been played before. Not because you were weak, but because you were open in environments that required awareness. And that openness, without structure, becomes access. Access becomes leverage, and leverage in the wrong hands becomes loss. But that does not have to continue. Not if you are willing to see. Not if you are willing to adjust. Not if you are willing to let go of the idea that being a good person is enough to protect you in every situation. It is not. But being a good person who understands the game, that is something else entirely. That is someone who moves with intention, someone who listens beneath words, someone who recognizes patterns before they become problems, someone who doesn't rush to be understood, but chooses when understanding serves them, someone who can sit in silence without discomfort, who can hold their position without explanation, who can step into any environment and read it before reacting to it. That is someone who is no longer easy to play. And once you are no longer easy to play, everything changes. Not overnight, not dramatically, but consistently. The same situations that once drained you begin to feel manageable. The same interactions that once confused you begin to make sense. The same people who once moved around you begin to adjust to you. Because the game did not change. You did. And now finally, you see it. If this shifted something in you, don't let it fade into another moment of awareness that changes nothing. Most people will hear this, feel it, and go right back to being predictable. Take what you've seen and apply it, quietly, consistently, without announcing it. If you value this kind of depth, the psychology of power, awareness, and real-world strategy, then support the channel. Like the video so it reaches the people who need clarity, not comfort. Share it with someone who keeps getting played without understanding why. And subscribe, because what's coming next goes even deeper into the patterns most people never learn to see. Stay observant, stay composed, and remember, you don't win by reacting better. You win by becoming someone they can't read, can't rush, and can't move. That's where everything changes.